Hello and welcome to another edition of TechLaunch in the News. Let's get into it. Web 3.0 in the news. Let's dive into this edition. First, to kick us off, we're going to take a look at how decentralization and Web3 will impact the enterprise. There's a lot in this article, but one of the big things that's kind of a summary is essentially that Web3 is an important category of technology to the business world. And it's essentially asking the question, should the average organization be investing in understanding and realizing Web3's dense layers of highly sophisticated ideas and technologies? It can be very complex, and there can be parts of Web3 that may not ever make it to the mainstream. It is significant and inevitable enough now to warrant concerted investment and innovation, or is it significant enough? And that's really the question that this article is kind of going into. Basically, the summary, as they say, is that Web3 has grown up and it's become mature enough that it's actually a really important technology for businesses to look at. And here you can see just kind of a visual of some of the different aspects of the Web3 ecosystem. Now, if you go back and take a look at Web 2.0 and that whole revolution, a lot of the companies that didn't get involved, especially kind of as early adopters, and maybe not bleeding edge adopters, but early adopters, they were left behind. And so we're encouraging folks to really just understand some of the concepts, some of the aspects of the space, and really see how viable they are and potentially could become within your aspect of Web3. One of the things that's interesting is strong cryptography combined with digital signatures for trusted change of transactions, decentralized and collectively owned ledgers like blockchain, and long-term digital stores of value. These are all kind of trends that are looking like they're going to stick around. On the other hand, the crypto exchanges, NFT marketplaces, and even cryptocurrencies themselves seem like they will come and go. So let me just restate that. Basically, the core kind of underpinning principles behind decentralized and collectively owned ledgers with blockchains to underpin them and long-term stores of value, that looks like it's going to stick around. But some of the different exchanges, marketplaces, and cryptocurrencies may come and go. So hopefully that helps as a summary of kind of what makes sense to focus on as a business in this space. Now, this article goes on to say that decentralization, or the notion that instead of large sections of the internet being owned and controlled by centralized entities, ownership is instead distributed amongst its builders and users. This is kind of a core tenet of Web3. Now, this is pretty challenging, but the overall idea here is that blockchains embody this, but they don't own it exclusively, and the core output is going to be a contest for who will create the next software stack that will run the future of the internet. Now, that's a pretty lofty statement, but it's really kind of one of the things that the enterprise is having to kind of grapple with is to what extent and in what arena will Web3 be important for the enterprise. The cryptographic systems and immutable transaction ledgers of Web3 have now stood enough of the test of time to prove out and show the way. So this article is asserting that basically those are some of the key areas that you're going to want to focus on. And essentially the kind of most valuable internal business use cases are going to be things like team collaboration, onboarding, learning and development, as well as external use cases with things like shopping, marketplaces, and customer experience using metaverse. The distributed autonomous organizations concept, with that, tokens are issued and stakeholders have a well-defined decision-making process. And essentially a new type of digital corporation, or DAO, can be used in an enterprise context for everything from open innovation and investment to IP-based professional services or industry-scale consortiums. Now, this is kind of interesting because the idea is that it's just a smart contract with rules, and then essentially this is a way to interact and transact. Again, I would just kind of encourage you to think about the fact that some of this isn't really proven out, but it is worth looking at and understanding. Web3 apps, this is probably one of the most prominent areas that's definitely going to go, reasonably, if not very well, as an investment. The concept here is business apps that operate on decentralized data, customer-facing apps that engage in transactions or provide data services, and decentralized ERP and CRM systems. Now, these are just kind of in their nascent phase, but you'll see a lot of ERP, CRM, and kind of classic systems becoming kind of decentralized versions and taking advantage of some of the benefits of Web3. And that's probably really heavily worth watching. If you're going to be driving some of that innovation, going ahead and experimenting with it. If you already have massive investments, you're probably going to want to look at how you can at least test the waters and possibly get into the Web3 space and augment what you're doing with Web3. And this list does go on. There are a lot of detailed aspects of this list. The main thing we wanted to point out just overall, just kind of in summary, is that there are multiple different kind of facets that the assertion of the article is that corporations and enterprises ought to be looking at. We certainly encourage you to do that so you can get a high level and just kind of get a sense of what might be useful for your business, your enterprise. Okay, let's take a look at the next article now. Okay, so this one is talking about how Solana just launched a Web3 mobile phone, and it's going to cost around $1,000. Now, this is pretty interesting because there was already a mobile device that an alternative group, a different group, launched in 2018, and they spent quite a bit on it, and it didn't really make it. The interesting thing about Solana is that they do have a pretty substantial kind of bank and war chest behind them. They also have a lot of kind of momentum within the space of support. But basically, the idea here is that their phone is going to be called Saga. It's going to be leveraging Android, and it will be using a lot of Web3 kind of decentralized store concepts that other makers have tried to perfect, and they've put out there, again, like I said, in 2018. But hopefully, if this gets some traction, they will be able to start to create an upward spiral with this kind of mobile app store that they're going to create, that will be dApps that will be available and allow them to pursue this Web3 space as kind of an early adopter and an early kind of owner of the space if they can deliver. Okay, so the last article we wanted to go over here is how a lot of Web3 companies get hacked, according to crypto VC Grace Isford. And if you read this article, it's interesting. She's basically saying that Web3 tends to lack enterprise level security solutions. And this is in comparison to Web2. So there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of kind of new change that's occurring. But it's like the Web3 space sort of forgot or probably realistically didn't learn the hard lessons that Web2 already learned about security. So they're kind of suffering a lot of these challenges. She's saying that the tech is still quite nascent. And when it comes to developer tools, data infrastructure, monitoring, and storage, it's a risk area. I think that the issue is really keeping a lot of folks out of the crypto world right now because they're afraid of losing all their money. And if they venture too deeply into crypto, they're going to be exposed to these risks. And so that's just kind of a very high level from her. Basically, this article goes on to say that better fraud and risk management systems are a precursor to more institutional money flowing into crypto. And if anything, right now, we're seeing a lot of that kind of output. There's even a site out there that literally talks about how much has been lost in the crypto space due to some of these issues with security. And the number is up to, according to that site, about $10 billion. So it's a pretty substantial number. And this has just been in the last several years that it's really accelerated. Isford goes on to say that she thinks that one of the biggest opportunities in crypto right now is still security. And if you could build more reliable smart contracts at scale, then you could have a reliable system, but not if it's insecure. And if you can't run a system securely, or she says you can't run a system securely if you don't know who's within that system. So she thinks that security is probably one of the most important pieces from a prioritization standpoint. So really easy to talk about, not necessarily easy to execute on. But when you're looking at Web3 and how you can gain an edge, pairing it with security and focusing on security is absolutely going to be a huge opportunity going forward. Thanks for watching this edition of TechLaunch in the News. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe so you can see more in the news resources. We also have complimentary masterclasses and other resources available to you on our website, www.gotechlaunch.com. If you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear them in the comments section. And until next time, thanks for watching and bye for now.